Welcome to the deep dive. We're going deep on something pretty fascinating today. Synchronicity. Ever have those moments where, like, seemingly unrelated events just line up in a way that feels deeply meaningful?
Oh yeah, those coincidences that make you stop and think, is there something more going on here?
Exactly. And it's an idea that's been capturing imaginations for centuries across different fields, really.
It really has. People have been noticing these kind of eyebrow-raising connections for ages. And in this deep dive, we're going to try to explore all the different angles on what might be happening.
Definitely. And we've got a great stack of material to work with today. Articles by Annie Yusim, some insights from Wikipedia and Science Direct, the Psychology Today piece, and a really interesting YouTube transcript where Carl Jung actually discusses his perspective on it.
Our mission, to unpack this whole captivating topic and see what clicks with you, the listener.
All right, so to start unpacking, let's go straight to the source, the man himself, Carl Jung. When he talked about synchronicity, what exactly did he mean?
Well, he defined it as meaningful coincidences that can't be explained by cause and effect. So it's not just random things happening at the same time. The meaningful part is absolutely crucial for Jung.
Right, it's got to have that extra layer of significance, like it's not just a fluke.
Exactly. He felt these events had a meaning that went beyond just pure chance.
And he had some seriously compelling examples to back it up. The scarab beetle story is one that always sticks with me. Why was that particular instance so pivotal for him?
Yeah, it's a classic one. So Jung was in therapy with a patient, and she was describing this dream she had about a golden scarab beetle. Now, scarab beetles, they have a rich symbolic history representing transformation and rebirth in ancient Egyptian mythology.
Oh, wow, I didn't know that.
As she's talking about this dream, a real beetle, a rose chafer beetle, which is the closest local equivalent, flies into his office and taps against the window. Jung emphasized the huge psychological impact this had on the patient.
It's like, whoa, okay, universe, I'm listening.
It wasn't just a weird coincidence for them. It felt like a tangible manifestation of her inner process, a powerful confirmation of the dream's meaning right at that moment.
Wow, it really does make you think. Like the symbolism of the scarab appearing right then, it's definitely not just like thinking of someone and then they call.
No, not at all.
It's more like the inner and outer worlds were mirroring each other in a way that was really significant. And Jung connected this idea of synchronicity to his concept of the collective unconscious, didn't he?
He did. He theorized that synchronicity happens when an individual's personal unconscious, all their unique thoughts and feelings, aligns with the collective unconscious.
Okay, so remind me what the collective unconscious is again.
Think of it like a shared universal layer of the human psyche that contains these things called archetypes.
Right, archetypes. Those are like universal patterns of behavior, imagery, and thought, right?
You got it. So when there's a strong resonance between what's going on in someone's personal unconscious and these broader archetypal patterns in the collective unconscious, well, it can show up as a synchronistic event in the external world.
So it's like an inner psychological state finding a matching outer parallel that has a specific meaning.
Exactly.
That's pretty mind-blowing. And Jung's interest in synchronicity wasn't just a sudden idea, was it? It seems like it had roots in his exploration of Eastern philosophies, especially his work with the I Ching. How did that influence his thinking?
That's a great observation. You're right. Jung's initial dive into causal connections, meaning connections not based on cause and effect, came from his work with the I Ching.
The I Ching, that's that ancient Chinese divination text, right?
That's the one. And it operates on this principle that the answer you get isn't causally linked to the question you asked in a linear Western sense.
Yeah.
It's believed that the hexagram you get at that moment meaningfully coincides with your psychological state and the nature of your question.
Interesting. So it's more about meaning than a direct cause and effect relationship.
Right. And Jung found this principle stood in stark contrast to the dominant Western worldview, which really emphasizes cause and effect in science.
So the I Ching gave him a new way to understand how the universe might make sense, not just through one thing causing another, but through these patterns of meaning.
It's a different way of looking at things, for sure.
And didn't he collaborate with a famous physicist on this idea too, Wolfgang Pauli?
Yeah, he did. Jung's journey with synchronicity led him to this amazing collaboration with Wolfgang Pauli. He was a Nobel Prize-winning physicist, and both of them were grappling with the limits of science to explain certain phenomena.
I can see how their paths would cross. So what did they explore together?
Their work is known as the Pauli-Jung conjecture. They explored the idea that just as we have laws of cause and effect, there might also be causal principles that govern not only psychological events, but maybe even how matter behaves at a deeper level.
That's a big idea.
It is. They wondered if things like synchronicity and certain quantum phenomena could be different expressions of these underlying causal connections.
So, like, synchronicity might not just be a psychological thing, it could be woven into the fabric of reality itself.
That was their thinking.
Wow. So, moving beyond Jung's initial framework, it seems like synchronicity really resonates with various spiritual traditions too. It's often seen as more than just a psychological thing, but something with a sense of the divine or cosmic guidance. How do spiritual perspectives typically interpret these meaningful coincidences?
A lot of traditions see synchronicity as a way the universe or a higher power communicates with us or guides us. These coincidences are seen as signs, especially when people are facing big decisions or life changes.
That makes sense, like when you're wrestling with a tough choice and then bam, you stumble upon a piece of advice that seems tailor-made for your situation.
Exactly. It could be in a book, a conversation, a random encounter. In those moments, synchronicity feels like a nudge or a confirmation or like a new path is being lit up for you.
And that can be so reassuring, right? Like you're not alone in figuring things out.
Exactly. Synchronicity can give you that deep feeling of being connected to something bigger than yourself. Like there's a purpose to how things are unfolding, even if you don't see the cause and effect right away.
It's like the universe is winking at you saying you're on the right track.
That's a great way to put it. And at the heart of this is the idea of interconnectedness, that we're all part of a cosmic tapestry, where everything is interwoven in ways we may not always see.
So this idea of a deeper connection is a recurring theme, but what about the scientific community? They tend to be a bit more skeptical of these kinds of things.
Yeah, the scientific community generally views synchronicity with a healthy dose of skepticism. They often categorize it as pseudoscience.
Why is that?
The main issues are testability and falsifiability. In science, a hypothesis needs to be testable through experiments, and there has to be a way to prove it wrong.
And how do you design an experiment to test something as subjective as meaning?
Exactly. It's really hard to design experiments that can definitively prove or disprove the existence of meaningful causal connections. How do you measure meaning objectively? How do you create a controlled environment where you can reliably make synchronistic events happen? These are big challenges.
So you can't just put synchronicity under a microscope and run a bunch of trials. That makes sense. So what are the more conventional scientific explanations for why people experience these moments?
Well, the mainstream scientific view tends to attribute these experiences to things like cognitive biases and probabilities. Given the sheer number of events happening all the time, some improbable coincidences are bound to happen just by chance.
That's true. The odds are that some weird stuff is going to line up sometimes.
Right. And then we have things like confirmation bias, where we tend to pay more attention to things that confirm our existing beliefs and ignore things that don't fit.
Like if you're convinced that the number 7 is lucky, you'll notice all the times it pops up, but not the times other numbers do.
Exactly. And then there's apophenia, which is our tendency to find patterns and meaning even in random data.
Our brains are always trying to connect the dots, even if there's no picture to be made.
Precisely. So sometimes we might see meaningful links where there really aren't any.
So our brains might be playing tricks on us. But some of our sources talked about these intriguing parallels between synchronicity and some concepts in quantum physics. Now, that's a field where our usual understanding of cause and effect gets a little weird.
It does get strange. Some thinkers have explored the connection between synchronicity and things like non-locality and quantum entanglement.
Can you break those down for me?
Sure. Non-locality suggests that two quantum particles can be linked instantly across huge distances. So a change in one instantly affects the other no matter how far apart they are. Quantum entanglement is similar, where particles are linked so they share the same fate even when separated.
Whoa. So it's like they're communicating faster than the speed of light.
Right. And these phenomena seem to defy our typical ideas of cause and effect. Some people have drawn parallels to the instantaneous and a causal nature of synchronistic events. It's as if there's a deeper level of connection in reality that we don't fully grasp.
Like maybe at the most fundamental level, everything's linked in ways we don't yet understand.
It's a possibility.
Our sources also mention the observer effect in quantum physics. How might that relate to synchronicity?
The observer effect is the idea that just by observing a quantum system, you can influence its state. It hints at a possible connection between our consciousness and the external world.
So our awareness could actually be shaping reality.
Some theorize that our consciousness and expectations might play a role in noticing or even shaping synchronistic events. It aligns with Jung's ideas about the connection between our inner world and the outer world.
That's a trippy thought. So even with all the skepticism, there have been some attempts to study synchronicity scientifically, right? What have we learned from those studies?
Yes. Despite the challenges of studying subjective meaning, there have been some studies on reported synchronicity experiences. For example, a 2009 study found a link between experiencing synchronicity and times of intense emotions or big life changes.
So when we're going through a lot, we might be more tuned in to these coincidences.
Maybe. It could be that during those times we're more internally focused and more likely to notice things that resonate with our inner state.
Makes sense. What about from the therapy side? Have therapists looked into this?
There were studies in 2016 that explored therapists' views on clients reporting synchronicities. Some therapists thought these reports could be useful in therapy, maybe as signs of unconscious material coming up. Others thought they were mainly due to chance or cognitive biases.
So even within psychology, there are different interpretations.
Definitely. There's no one-size-fits-all answer here.
I remember reading about a study on the clinical application of synchronicity in psychotherapy, too. What was that about?
That 2018 study looked at how the concept of synchronicity could be used in therapy, especially in a Jungian framework. The idea is that by acknowledging, exploring, and interpreting these meaningful coincidences in therapy, therapists can help patients understand themselves better, explore unconscious themes, and build a stronger therapeutic relationship.
So it's about using those moments to deepen the work. And wasn't there a study that suggested meaningful coincidences might happen more often than chance would predict?
Yes, a 2020 review of existing research suggested that, which raises some interesting questions about what might be going on.
It really does. It seems like intuition plays a big role in whether we even recognize something as synchronistic in the first place.
Absolutely. Intuition, that gut feeling or inner knowing, is key to spotting and understanding these events. It helps us perceive those subtle connections, the resonance, the feeling that something's significant about a coincidence. If an event triggers a strong aha feeling, it's more likely to be experienced as synchronistic.
So if intuition is so important, can we actually get better at it? Can we train ourselves to be more receptive to these synchronicities?
Our sources suggest that practices that quiet the mind and increase inner awareness can help develop intuition. Things like meditation, mindfulness, exercises, journaling to reflect on your thoughts and feelings. These can create space for those subtle intuitive insights to come through.
So it's about creating the right conditions for those insights to emerge.
Exactly. And paying attention to our dreams, which Jung saw as a major source of unconscious material, and being aware of our bodily sensations, can also give us valuable intuitive information.
It sounds like it's about becoming more attuned to ourselves on multiple levels. And when we do notice these coincidences, it seems like taking the time to reflect on them instead of just brushing them off can be really helpful for our growth.
You're right. Reflecting on those events can give us valuable insights into our inner world and what's happening in our lives. By thinking about the meaning or relevance of these coincidences, we might gain a new perspective on a problem we're facing or notice patterns in our lives.
It's like those events can be a mirror reflecting back some truth about ourselves or our situation.
It's a way of getting unstuck from our usual way of seeing things. And sometimes these reflections can even challenge our beliefs or inspire us to make a change. Like if you're thinking about a career change and you keep coming across positive signs related to that new field, it might give you the courage to take a leap.
So it's not just about passively observing these coincidences, it's about actively engaging with them and figuring out what they mean for us. And that's what separates a simple coincidence from a true synchronicity, right?
Exactly. Coincidences are just two or more events happening by chance without any deeper meaning. But synchronicity, as Jung defined it, needs that extra layer of meaning. It's that feeling of connection between your inner state and the external event that makes it synchronistic.
So it's the subjective experience of meaning that really matters.
Yeah.
To bring this to life, let's talk about some of the examples from our sources. Jung himself had a lot of these intriguing experiences.
He did. Besides the scarab beetle story, there's his account of experiencing weird physical sensations like a cracking sound. At the same time that Freud's bookcase inexplicably cracked, and he even predicted a second cracking sound, which then happened.
That's freaky. It's like their unconscious minds were somehow linked.
It really challenges a purely materialist view of their interactions.
Then there's the example of his work with the I Ching and how similar symbolic imagery showed up in his mandala drawings after he got The Secret of the Golden Flower.
That's a powerful example. You have these two seemingly unrelated sources, Jung's own inner exploration through mandalas and the ancient wisdom of the secret of the golden flower, both expressing similar symbolic imagery.
It's like they were tapping into the same universal wellspring of symbols.
Exactly. It really supported Jung's ideas about the universality of certain archetypes and the possibility of a collective unconscious.
The YouTube transcript also had that story about the student who dreamt of a specific Spanish city and then later found himself in that exact place with all the details matching up.
That's a vivid one. The student dreamt of a particular city, a square with a Gothic cathedral and a carriage with cream-colored horses. Later, when he visited Spain, he found himself in that very city, that square, and saw a carriage just like in his dream.
Talk about a real-life dream come true.
It does make you wonder about the nature of reality and the possibility of knowing things beforehand.
And then there's the more somber example of Jung's dream on the night his patient died by suicide. That speaks to a different kind of connection.
That dream where Jung saw someone entering his room on the same night his patient took her own life is a very powerful example. It suggests a connection that goes beyond our senses, a kind of interconnectedness that might be heightened during significant life events like death.
It's like those moments crack open the veil between the worlds. It's interesting that even Jung himself wasn't sure about the example of the fish appearing after all those fish-related coincidences.
Yeah, that one's a good reminder that not every strange coincidence is necessarily a profound synchronicity. While the sequence of events was improbable, Jung didn't feel a strong personal connection to it at the time. It might have been a truly random occurrence without that deeper personal meaning that usually defines synchronicity for him.
So it's about the quality of the coincidence, not just the quantity. The example of the woman dreaming of a fox and then seeing one in real life feels more in line with that idea of an inner image manifesting externally.
That's a classic example. The fox often represents instinct and cunning, and it appeared in the woman's dream while she was dealing with intellectual blocks. Then she encounters a real fox while on a walk. It suggests a meaningful link between her inner state and the outer world. Maybe it was a message to trust her gut.
Like the universe was saying, hey, listen to your instincts. And who hasn't had that feeling of déjà vu? The idea that it might be linked to some kind of prior knowledge from our dreams is fascinating.
Déjà vu is such a strange feeling. Jung and others have considered it as possibly being connected to the unconscious mind. Maybe we get glimpses of future events through dreams or other non-conscious processes.
It makes you wonder about how our perception of time and memory really works. Wikipedia also mentions some cool historical examples like Émile Deschamps and his encounters with plum pudding and the Pauli effect with the physicist Jung worked with.
The story of Émile Deschamps and the plum pudding is wild. He kept encountering it throughout his life. And then there was that bizarre coincidence with a long-lost acquaintance and a spoiled dessert. It really makes you question the odds. And then there's the Pauli effect, where lab equipment would malfunction around Wolfgang Pauli. It's like he had this unintentional psychic influence on his surroundings.
Some people just seem to attract weirdness. The examples from Science Direct were more relatable, like thinking of someone and then they call you. We've all experienced that.
Yeah, those everyday synchronicities. Like the doubly exposed film where images from the past and present merged, or the uncle having Vietnam flashbacks while watching news about the Iraq War. These things show how synchronistic events can show up in our lives, often with strong emotional weight.
It's those moments where you feel a sudden connection across time or space. And that example of the woman whose coyote encounters led to a major life change is really inspiring.
Those coyote coincidences became a powerful symbolic narrative for her. They led her to explore the trickster archetype and ultimately helped her change her life for the better. It shows how paying attention to these patterns can guide us towards growth.
Synchronicity isn't always a solo experience, though, is it? Science Direct talked about the connections between synchronicity and creativity and interpersonal relationships.
That's right. The connection with creativity suggests that these coincidences can spark new ideas and help us break out of old ways of thinking. It's like the universe is offering up these unexpected connections that lead to innovation.
So it's about being open to those random sparks of inspiration.
And this idea resonates with Rupert Sheldrake's concept of morphic resonance, which proposes that there's a field of information that influences patterns.
So maybe these synchronicities are tapping into that field.
It's an intriguing possibility. And then there's interpersonal synchronicity, those subtle but powerful moments of connection between people.
Tell me more about that.
It's things like tapping in unison, mirroring each other's body language, or even experiencing similar physiological responses like changes in heart rate at the same time.
Like when you're really in sync with someone and it feels like you're on the same wavelength.
Exactly. And research suggests that this kind of synchrony can strengthen relationships and increase empathy. Mindfulness can also help us become more aware of these moments.
So it's about being present and attuned to the subtle cues in our interactions.
Yes. But as we mentioned earlier, it's important to remember Jung's warnings about misinterpreting every unusual event as a profound synchronicity.
Especially if someone's in a particular psychological state where they might be prone to seeing meaning everywhere.
Right. Jung observed that people with conditions like schizophrenia might develop very rigid and self-centered interpretations of events. That's different from the genuine experience of synchronicity.
So it's not about forcing meaning onto everything. And Andreas Tarnas cautioned against exaggerating trivial events to make them seem more important than they are.
He pointed out that we might inflate the significance of minor events to create a false sense of destiny or self-importance. That misses the point of true synchronistic experiences.
It's about being honest with ourselves and not trying to force the puzzle pieces to fit. So as we wrap up this deep dive, we've explored synchronicity from its roots in Jung's work to its spiritual interpretations and scientific perspectives. We've looked at its connections to personal growth, creativity, and relationships.
It's been quite a journey. And to sum it up, synchronicity is essentially those improbable and meaningful coincidences between our inner world and the outer world that we can't easily explain with cause and effect.
And while science offers its explanations, the subjective experience of these moments can be really powerful. They can feel like moments of deep connection, offering guidance, reassurance, or a nudge in the right direction.
So to leave you with something to ponder, what meaning do you find in the coincidences in your own life? Are they just random happenings, or are they signs from your intuition, or something even more mysterious? It's a question worth reflecting on.
It really is. Thanks for joining us on this deep dive into synchronicity.
It's been my pleasure.
Until next time, keep an eye out for those meaningful coincidences. You never know what the universe might be trying to tell you.
And keep exploring those connections.
And as always, happy diving.
Happy diving.